Hi, I'm Nathan Doerr, Curator of Natural Science here at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. Today, we're going to be looking at the alpine tundra and some of my favorite animals that live there, the American pika and the yellow-bellied marmot. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content on the American West. When we bring to mind the landscapes of Wyoming and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, most people think of the incredible mountaintops. That's actually a biome called the alpine tundra. Now, when many people think about that biome, they think it is devoid of life, but it's quite the contrary. There are a lot of animals and plants that have amazing adaptations to live up there, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The alpine tundra is actually a habitat beginning at approximately 10,000 feet in elevation here in Wyoming, going all the way up to our highest point, Gannett Peak, with an elevation of 13,810 feet above sea level. The conditions up in the alpine tundra are incredibly harsh. With high winds and cold temperatures, there's an incredibly short growing season. In addition, the alpine tundra is also known for its rocky outcroppings and talus slopes, or areas of rock slides. Because of those growing conditions and all of those rocks, there's not a lot of soil, making it difficult for trees to take root, and even smaller plants. But there are plants that live up in the alpine tundra, and they have some incredible adaptations that help them to survive. Examples of adaptations that plants have to survive in the alpine tundra include growing very low to the ground to be protected from the wind, and you might be surprised to learn that they have really extensive roots as well. These large root systems help store lots of nutrients so that the plants can survive the long winters. There are a lot of animals that live up in the alpine tundra as well. And today we're going to be talking about the American pika and the yellow-bellied marmot. But before we talk about these two specimens, I want to share a little bit of information about the natural history collections of the Draper Natural History Museum. These two specimens are just two examples of the collection that represents life in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. The Draper Natural History Museum acquires specimens like these through methods of salvage, through special permit, and by transfer by organizations and agencies like the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Once we've acquired specimens, we have an incredible team of volunteers who work in our lab to prepare those specimens. We'll start by looking at the yellow-bellied marmot. This is an example of a preparation method known as a round skin. This is a female yellow-bellied marmot, an adult, and it measures approximately 30 inches from the tip of the nose to the end of the long bushy tail. In the wild, marmots weigh between 5 and 11 pounds, and they're distinguished by this reddish-brown coloration, as well as the yellow underbelly, which is where they get their name, yellow-bellied marmots. In the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, you can find yellow-bellied marmots anywhere from the valley floor all the way up into the alpine tundra. Just look for them in rocky outcroppings and those talus slopes. Now, one amazing adaptation that this animal has to survive those harsh conditions of the alpine tundra is hibernation. In fact, the yellow-bellied marmot hibernates for up to 8 months out of the year. When we think of its entire lifespan, that's more than half of its life spent sleeping. Yellow-bellied marmots enter hibernation anywhere from September to October, and they won't emerge again until April or May, depending on the elevation and, of course, the conditions. During hibernation, the yellow-bellied marmot's temperature decreases to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and its heart rate drops from between 180 and 200 beats per minute all the way down to nearly 30 beats per minute. Now, as if that wasn't enough sleeping, imagine that there are other times during the summer when the yellow-bellied marmot is known to go back into its burrow, and that's when it enters a state of estivation. Estivation is an extended period of dormancy that's the result of hot or dry conditions, and for the yellow-bellied marmot, that usually means the lack of green vegetation. Yellow-bellied marmots are known to enter estivation as early as June, but they'll always come out by the end of late summer so that they can spend time getting as many calories as they can in order to survive the winter months. Unlike the yellow-bellied marmot, the American pika doesn't hibernate. This is an adult pika mounted in a standing position by a professional taxidermist, almost as though it's getting ready to make its unique and distinctive shriek sound, which is one of the first ways you'll know if you're out in the alpine or in a talus slope and you hear them oftentimes before you see them. Adult pikas can be 6 to 8 inches long and can weigh approximately 6 ounces. That's about the weight of a medium-sized apple. Their distinguishable brownish-gray coat helps them to blend in, as you can see, with the rocks, the gneiss and granite rocks of the alpine tundra. Now, as I mentioned, the American pika does not hibernate. Instead, it spends all summer long gathering vegetation, grasses and leaves, and then it lays those out on the rocks in the sun to dry. Once that vegetation has dried, it takes it underneath the rocks and creates haystacks. By laying that vegetation out on the rocks and allowing it to dry in the sun, that helps it to keep longer and avoids any mold. The pikas will become very defensive of their haystacks that they build under the rocks, and then will continue to eat on those haystacks throughout the winter. As amazing as all of that is, there's one other thing about pikas that I just think is really incredible. And that is that this little animal that looks like a hamster, but it's not. It's actually the smallest member of the rabbit family. This animal is an indicator of climate change. Pika populations are incredibly susceptible to insufficient snows in the winter, to increased temperatures in the summer, and the resulting loss of habitat. Because they're an indicator of climate change and so susceptible to these changes, scientists are concerned that the pikas may become extirpated. Extirpation is the process of localized extinction of a species. Both of these animals, as I've mentioned, can be found throughout the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, depending on when and where you visit. But whether it's an animal that's small, like the pika, or a large iconic species like the bison, it's important to give every species its distance. Never try to pet or handle these animals, and don't feed them. A change in behavior or diet can mean the difference between life and death for these animals. When we think back to the alpine tundra, where we would find both of these animals, I want you to know that the alpine tundra is actually one of the most fragile environments on the planet. We already know that the growing season is incredibly short, and the conditions are very harsh, making it difficult for plants and animals to live there. But through their adaptations, they're able to survive. But when we go off trail and trample those plants, the effects can be felt throughout the food chain, including to the pika and the yellow-bellied marmot. So now when we think of those mountaintops, we realize that they're actually full of life that's incredibly adapted to living there. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, be sure to hit like, subscribe to our channel for more great content, and head over to centerofthewest.org.